civil discourse. We're at Maryland University. We're going to ask you guys how you feel about different things or ethnicities, and how do you define race?
I feel like race is a nuance specifically because it's based on how a person identifies themselves. Of course, it has to do with like where your family comes from, but it's more so like the history behind you. And like, how do I explain it? I don't know.
It's difficult, right? Now, here's a different question, right? How many races do you think there are, if there are races?
Can't put a number on it because I don't know every single race within every country.
So you think different countries, different races? Okay. And so, is a race different than an ethnicity?
Yes.
How is it different?
Race is more so what we see on the outside. Like
Phenotype.
it's like race is visible, but ethnicity is not. I think what I was describing earlier is more so towards your ethnicity, because that's something that's more so based on like your history and culture and like where your family background is from, like where you are a descendant of. But your race is something that is like visible to everyone.
So race is just the phenotype on the outside,
Right.
just what you look like to the average person walking down the street, right? Okay, so that all being said, if you believe there are such things, the terms black and white, what percentage of African do you have to be black?
I'm not qualified to determine. I couldn't tell you, but I do. But if we base it on history, then like all it takes is that one drop. Like depending on like what year you were in, if you had one drop of African blood in you, then you were automatically deemed black. So
That's 1865. Do you think we should still go by what they said, or should we be different today?
I don't think that we should, but I think in many cases we do, unfortunately.
Okay. So the phenotype, so black it's not a race though, according to what you're just telling me, right? Because it's strictly identifying from the outside or the inside.
That's where it gets shady. I can tell you because like black, it can be a race because you can look at someone and say, oh, this person is black, but you can also look at someone and they not look black.
You see that little girl?
Yeah.
Okay, she's mixed, right? But
stand right
what does she look like?
Second.
I didn't really see her.
Alana, come here.
She's so cute.
If you had to give her a label quickly, snap label walking down the street.
It would probably be some mixed with some Indian descent of sorts.
So she's mostly European with African ancestry. So that's my point of this is when we have to make a snap judgment about somebody on the phenotype is really, if that's all race is, it's just this snap judgment. So what percentage of European do you think you'd have to be white?
I couldn't tell you.
So someone to say you're white, right? Nah.
But I do feel like in the society that we live in, if you are 1% black, then somebody is more likely to say, oh, that person is black. But if they know that you're like 1% white, they're probably not going to say you're white. They'll deem it to whatever else you are.
So how does it make you feel to see a black woman with a white man? Does it create any emotions or no? Or it does?
I don't have any personal emotions towards it, but I feel like as long as you are happy in your relationship, if I see it and you're unhappy, then it's kind of like, what made you do that? Are you seeking some sort of acceptance? Or like, but if you were genuinely happy with whoever you're with, then like, live your best life.
Would you date someone from another race who's different than you?
I have, but moving forward, would I still? No.
Why is that?
Because I'm realizing that the cultural differences behind it are extremely meaningful to me. And like that could vary person to person. But for me, it matters that we share certain similarities and experiences so you can understand where I'm coming from when certain things frustrate me.
Okay, doing I'm Mike Ford. How are you?
Fine.
How do you feel about race?
How do I feel about race?
Yes, ma'am.
I think all races should be equal.
How do you feel?
Everyone should be treated as equal.
Now, is ethnicity different from race, in your own opinion?
Yes.
How so?
Because you can be of a certain race and have different ethnicity.
Absolutely, such as this young lady right here. She's of mixed culture. That's just, yeah, look at her. Her smile is nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, what percentage of African do you think you need to be considered black?
1%.
1%. Just a drop, and that's it.
Just drop.
All you need is a drop of that melanin, that's you. That's it right there. I know, that's you. How do you feel about it?
Never thought about it.
You never thought about
it? I mean, unless you have some history of
flip side, how much percentage do you need of European to be considered white? I know.
Oh.
I mean, there it's on the.
So, well, I know my husband has some European in him, and he's black, so.
So I guess you gotta have 99%. You gotta have that. That's what
well,
you're
maybe it's a percentage. I mean, he's a percentage of
European descent.
right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Do you think we have to identify by what was the rule in 1865, or can we self-identify now? Is it different? Are we allowed to?
self-identify.
Self-identify. Whatever you feel is what you are is what you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody has their own personal opinion about who they are. You could walk down the street and say, ma'am, even though I look like this, I prefer to be called Indian.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That works as well. So this is more on a personal level. How do you feel when you see a black man walking with a white woman? Or a white man walking with a black woman? Does that make you feel at all?
My sister's married a white man, so it doesn't matter to me.
Absolutely. How do you feel?
It's normal to me. I live in a
Yeah.
community where there's a lot of it.
So interracial relationships are fine.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So when people try to say, are they justified as, oh, well, this person should be with them because of this color or this ethnicity, they should be with their own kind. How do you feel about that?
It's wrong.
It's
I feel whoever you fall in love with, that's who you should be with.
Is race different from ethnicity, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they are different. I think people can identify as a different ethnicity and a different race. You know, you might be African American, but then you still have your heritage, which goes back to your ethnicity.
Okay.
And so I think that's different than just being black, or you're just your race. Or same thing for white. A person could be white, but their ethnicity might be Australian or Hungarian.
Which leads me to my next question. If your mother's from India and your father's from Sweden, what ethnicity are you, or what race are you?
That's a good question.
Absolutely.
I think you could identify with both ethnicities, Swedish and Indian, or I think at that point you might be a person of color. I don't know. These are really good questions.
Yeah.
I don't think too much about them in my daily life. So
Okay.
especially which is interesting, being a person of color. I think you do kind of think about it more, but I don't know.
Okay. Would you date someone from a different race?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So that means that you have.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
that's good. Okay, absolutely. Like if somebody's walking down the street, do you judge them based on how they look?
I think obviously, like, everyone wants to say no, but as humans we have implicit bias,
Okay.
which is like that bias we have towards not even just color, just any characteristic about a person regarding height, weight, sexuality, whatever. And you don't necessarily, it's not explicit, excuse me. When you are walking down the street, you might quickly glance at someone and make a quick assumption. That's just your implicit bias,
Yeah, absolutely. Is self-segregation good or bad in your opinion?
What do you mean by self-segregation?
Like if an individual says, okay, I'm Indian, but I don't want to be a part of a white group. I want to segregate myself from myself without even having any bias or anything said about me in that group.
Or living?
Or a living situation, almost like if you see some people like, oh, most Spanish people live in Silver Spring or Tacoma Park, and then when you look at some people say, oh, that Indian group only stays in that neighborhood when they purchase homes.
And you're asking if that's
Self-segregation. How do you feel about that? Is that good or bad?
I don't think necessarily it's good or bad, because I think when people started first immigrating to this country, they went with what they felt comfortable, which is the people they were on the boat with, their people from their towns,
Okay.
Their family members, and obviously like they all moved to the same area in order to be with each other, to have that sense of familiarity in the new world that they're in, which is completely different.
No
and,
question.
Like they're in a whole new world. They have no idea what's going on, and so or the culture and everything. So they want to kind of have that sense of familiarity with them when they're in this new place, kind of like a security blanket almost.
Okay.
Because like when my family came here, my dad lived with in a neighborhood primarily Indian.
Absolutely,
Just
no
because
question.
he was amongst people like him, with the same food, language, and so like it felt safe for him because he wasn't immediately thrown into like, you know,
A new culture or
Yeah, you know, he barely knew English when he first came
Okay.
here, so like he had to acclimate. It took time, and like that the way it happened was because his like uncles and aunts, like they're older and they helped him. You know, if he would just came here in a whole new city without knowing anyone, that's very difficult, and people are very scared. So I think I don't think it's necessarily segregation. I think it's just people just going with what they're comfortable with.
Okay. Well, you've seen it first here on the Civil Discord with these Street Interviews. I'm Mike Corey.
Davine.
All right. You guys stay tuned for more shows.
So you know I have a master's in biological anthropology. So we study human and the history of humans. So race is a construct that actually doesn't exist. Well, it does. Race is Homo sapiens sapiens, which is human beings. Everyone's the same race.
Well, that is a different answer that we've heard, but the reason we ask that is we want people's opinions because we hear a lot about race in this country.
Yes.
And the next question we ask people is, what percentage, and this is, you've heard the term race, like black race, right?
Absolutely.
What percentage of African do you think you have to be considered black?
Another great question, huh? So let me just go back to the first question you asked me real quick. So, you know, there were different races of humans that did exist on Earth.
Yeah.
And what defined them was differences in genes, right? But right now, we're all Homo sapiens sapiens. That means we all have very similar genes. There's nothing that defines us as, like, I couldn't pull your DNA out and say, like, oh, you're white. That actually doesn't exist. Or pull someone else's DNA out and say, oh, she's brown. But we often define race in that construct to show color, but it does not exist in a genetic level. So what percentage of genes do you have to be quote-unquote African? That's another great question. Why? Because all the genes as we know today originated from Africa. So technically, everyone originated from Africa. I mean, so how brown does your skin have to be to define it? I don't know.
Is it a phenotype? Is it just superficial?
And it's not. I think it's superficial.
What people call that color when they say
expression.
someone's black.
It's an expression of a protein that exists on a cellular level.
But societal, would you say it was? What I'm getting to more is was it designed just to subjugate people, make them feel less?
Yes,
Initially. Or was
we
it
do
science?
use it that way, right? Because everyone has a sense of prejudice. They think that they are better than other people. So when people use it that way, oftentimes it's because they might not know who, you know, this other person's culture or lingo or food, so they use it to divide. You know? So it's interesting because we got our DNA tested from 23andMe.
Okay. Would you marry someone from another race?
Of course. From another ethnicity.
Right.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting that you're asking those things, and most people probably are telling you that, yeah, we have different races.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably just depends. But because I know the biology of it. But I think that there's definitely something called reverse racism. I don't know if you guys have probably encountered this. Sometimes people think that because they've experienced racism, that it's okay for them to act that way towards other people. And I think the bottom line is just be nice to everybody.
There you go.